Gather around, heroes, and join me for an in-depth look at the classes of Demeo.
Re-upped with corrections, updates, and more YouTube ads for 2024.
In this episode, we look under the helmet of Sigrun, Guardian of the Realm. Sigrun is a champion of the Royal Guard, and she has deftly wielded her spear and mighty shield in countless battles. In combat, Sigrun is a stalwart companion, and is always ready to step into the fray and draw an enemy's ire to protect her allies.
Somebody's just gonna have to go out there and take one for the team.
She is a short-ranged fighter with a physical damage focus. The broad-bladed spear lets the Guardian keep her distance from her enemy. The knockback ability drives targets one space away from the Guardian, if an empty space is available. Offensively, this can add 1 point of environmental damage if the enemy ends up in a space with poison or slime, even if they haven't actually moved. Or you might just knock them into water to remove a corruption buff, or prime them for a lightning strike.
Nice try, Zedekar. Do not make something wet for a lightning strike unless you can also get the hell away from it.
Defensively, it creates separation from the enemy, allowing the Guardian to escape slower enemies with a single move. She can also protect others by knocking enemies away.
If you're trying to make an enemy next to an ally attack you instead, you need to use a diagonal knockback first to create separation. Then you can wedge yourself in between.
And on special teams, gas lamps can be exploded without poisoning the Guardian to set up deadly zones for monsters to travel through. Sigrun is well protected by her Guardian armor. This provides her with 5 points that are drained by damage before health is. This even works against damage from the poisoned status. This opens up some possibilities during combat that would be suicidal for other characters. Taking damage in exchange for damaging or freezing enemies becomes a real option.
For the gods, die.
Taunting monsters lets her continue to be the tank even at a distance. A bone thrown at an enemy, or any attack on a scorpion, will make the taunter its highest priority target.
The bone is a lie. It says it taunts, but it doesn't taunt anymore.
Repair Armour is Sigrun's replenishing card. When her armor is damaged in battle, she can whip out the forge and hammer to repair it. Actually, it's probably more like she lifts her shield and squares off to regain her poise. There's no roll, and it can be used to skip an action if already full. New players will want to keep up their armor at all times. When they become more comfortable with the risk, they will see where a good offense is actually the best defense, and choose to attack rather than replenish armor. This is where the mobility of the Guardian really comes out.
So under Repair Armor, you're going to talk about not using armor. I'm going to take over. Armor lets you take hits. Taking hits lets you neutralize enemies doing up to 5 damage per turn. The Guardian helps out the entire party by moving into position to take hits away from the others. Even if you miss an attack, that's not the important part when you're defending. It's moving to the right place to take damage, and rolling a miss can't take that away from you.
Piercing Throw is a starting card, and causes damage in a straight line up to medium range. This is the big damage card, good for monsters that are kind enough to line up. This can be encouraged by filtering them down a corridor or through a doorway. Using your first action to line up the shot will maximize its effectiveness.
One fell swoop. For the king.
It's also good for exploding lamps safely, so carrying around an oil or ice lamp could prove handy. Whirlwind Attack is the other starting card. It delivers a spinning attack that damages everything around the Guardian and pushes them back. Movement to the target space and knockback on those enemies occurs even on a miss, which means you can always rely on some environmental damage. You can only move to an empty space. Range is the same as a regular move action, but limited to line of sight. It is affected by anything that affects your movement, so Weaken drops your range by 1 space, Tangle drops your range to 1, and Swiftness potions increase by 1 space per draft. It allows Sigrun to move past enemies that are blocking her, and also attack unseen things that she can't target with a regular attack. Charge is another traveling attack card that gives the Guardian excellent mobility. It has medium range and can target only empty spaces, which is where she ends up. Like Piercing Throw, Charge does damage in a straight line to medium range. It differs in that the damage is 2 points lower, and it moves the Guardian. It doesn't damage friendlies, and it applies random knockback to enemies.
Line up and die.
This card can be used purely as a movement aid, passing through enemy lines and covering more ground than a normal move.
A vortex lamp.
It's another good option for exploding lamps and
Now we
elementals
just
safely.
need to hit it.
Dropping water or even vortex lamps and detonating them without taking any damage becomes an option.
I will vanquish you. Die.
Sigrun's war cry is as piercing as her broad-bladed spear. It can target enemies up to medium range, or empty spaces and the Guardian herself, so long as there are enemies within the area of effect. This allows the card to be used as an enemy detector. If you can't play the card on a space, then there are no enemies within 2 spaces of it.
Okay, yeah, but also remember that monsters can suddenly appear after you move, so it's not completely reliable.
It causes targets to panic for 2 turns. Panic creatures don't take any action other than random movement. This interrupts a monster's build-up attack, such as the Goblin Madden's Charge. Different wards can smite her enemies and aid her friends.
Those wonderful toys.
The Behemoth is a summons that can be placed in any empty space within 5 spaces. This smite ward has 7 hit points, and unless it's destroyed, it will last all levels. It fires a cannonball once per turn for 4 points of damage on a hit, and 1 point of fire damage to surrounding spaces. All targets are knocked back 1 space. This will ignite poison clouds. They have a firing range of 10 spaces, and the best part is, they can target unseen creatures, so they can shoot things that you don't even know about.
Enemy time.
The Behemoth and the Repeating Ballista do soft damage, and by that I mean they don't damage lamps.
Old news. Behemoth got a buff recently, and it does damage lamps now.
Sometimes you drop a Behemoth in an emergency, to get support or create a distraction.
My armor is my
If you get time to plan its placement for effectiveness and a long life of service, you'll want to consider 2 things. First is offense. Think about how many spaces the artillery can target. Walls provide cover for enemies. Range is limited to 10 spaces. Anything on a higher level cannot be targeted. Second is defense. How close can an enemy get before the Behemoth can target it? Combos. Drop lamps to block routes to your Behemoth.
I'm just going to mute you right there. This still works in a pinch, but those lamps don't last long.
Add healing wards to repair the Behemoth, lures to take the heat off of it and to give it time to neutralize attackers, and scrying beacons to let you see what's going on. Enemies don't spawn when you have visibility, so this keeps them from appearing right next to your emplacements. The Courageous buff will help your placements survive, dish out greater damage, and even cause panic to enemies. Healing Beacon is the Guardian's other placement. The card operates similarly to the Behemoth. It heals 3 hit points and cures negative statuses on friendlies within 4 spaces, though it can't heal itself. It targets the player with the lowest health before healing other friendlies. Kana is a player character, and because she has 5 health to start and 7 health at Fortitude 2, she can end up pulling healing away from the humans when she takes any damage. Toss a second healing ward to make a sustainable emplacement.
This ward will
The more you add, the longer it'll last. Combos. Grappling Hook turns it into a portable healing beacon.
This example is a little frivolous, but the Barbarian can be good at replacing things moved out of place by water, hounds, marauders, and vortex dust.
Let me show you a few of my military bases. This one is 2 Behemoths and 2 healing wards. They have the higher ground, and access is funneled through 5 points that can be targeted by both guns, or 1 gun plus a long walk. Monsters spawned next to it and eventually took out one of the Behemoths. Adding a lure greatly improved durability. This next one is 2 Behemoths and a lure. It ended up being very effective, in part because nothing spawned on top of it. Firing lines were alright, but enemies still managed to reach it. It did degrade over time, unable to repair itself, so adding a healing beacon made it nearly perfect. You can actually stop monsters from spawning anywhere on the map if you have enough scrying beacons. I don't recommend it, however, as it gets lonely. Here you can see my party of 4 and 1 scrying beacon. This completely nullified any monster spawns.
Your Guardian challenge is to take a level back from the monsters with enough behemoths and healing wards that you don't need to lift a finger.
As the tank, the Guardian protects the other characters, so it's advantageous to place her towards the end of the roster, where she can position herself without worrying about her comrades wandering off before monster move. She can take advantage of the debuffs provided by the Hunter and Sorcerer and help annihilate anything the Barbarian pulls up. That's all for today. If you learned something, spear that like button, and I hope whatever knowledge you gleaned here helps you ascend the ranks of the Royal Guard. This has been my Why.
And this has been Jolin14.
I'll see you in Helmar.